All right, so I totally apologize for that, but sometimes life is life, and it happened to me today as opposed to one of you. So we're going to go through bringing your AutoCAD file into the SketchUp file, and so that you can start working on building this up in 3 dimensions. And so we'll go through kind of the process. I went ahead and I opened up AutoCAD because I had a feeling that the 2019 version of AutoCAD wasn't going to be backwards compatible to the 2018 version of SketchUp because, of course, everybody likes to make your life more difficult. So while we're here, I have the AutoCAD file open. I'm going to do a save as of the AutoCAD file. It's the floppy disk, not that anybody uses floppy disks anymore, with the little pencil on it. That's the save as command here. And I'm going to save this. I'll put it into today's folder just so we know where it is. And that would be 124. And I'm going to save this as a 2013, which is the version prior to the 2018 version. So we're going to go backwards to the 2013. And I'm doing that in the Files of Type section here. I'm going to a 2013 version of AutoCAD. And then I'll go ahead and click on Save. Nothing much should change. It shouldn't even give you any warnings that you went backwards in time. But that should allow us to bring this file into our SketchUp file. When I'm working on this file, I could, in AutoCAD, go through and strip out all the pieces that I don't need. If I was in model space here, I could strip off the furniture and whatever, and I could delete it all. Or I can delete it in SketchUp. And it's a little bit easier in SketchUp, I think, because you can just delete layers as a group. If you try to delete, or if you've ever tried to delete a layer in AutoCAD, it's a little finicky. Because if you have objects on the layer, then it doesn't want to do it. And so you end up with a command called QSelect, and you're selecting certain objects. And it's way more complicated. So we're just going to bring it straight in as it is into SketchUp, and then work with it from there. So I have SketchUp already open. I have a brand new file here. It's in the feet and inches template. I've deleted the little person, and I've loaded up the large tool set for my own reference here. And I'm going to go to the File menu and then choose Import. So it's File and then Import. And right here, if you go and navigate for your file, you're going to find in all likelihood that you won't see it. Sorry, I haven't even connected OneDrive. I was just trying to get going here. And I might get into today's folder, and I don't see anything. And that's because SketchUp's looking for a 3D file, not an AutoCAD file by default. So I need to click on the list of file types here and change to an AutoCAD file type. Once I have changed to an AutoCAD file type, then I can select the AutoCAD file. So don't panic when it's not there. Just make sure you change your file as type AutoCAD. Then I'll go ahead and click on Import. And assuming this worked out OK, it should give me a little report here saying everything came in. I'll go ahead and close that. And there is my overall file. And so it brought a lot of stuff in, including things that I really didn't need, like all of these guides, for example. So the first thing to do is to really tidy up this drawing. And the reason that I care about tidying up this drawing is if I were to start drawing right on top of this right now, remember that the way SketchUp works is it immediately slices things up based on the various pieces that it interacts with. So we want to clean all of that up. And it looks like actually this came in as a group, I'm guessing. So let's go ahead and explode it so we get the individual pieces. There we go. So we've got the individual pieces there. And I'm going to look under the default tray here at my layers. So here's my layers right there. And most of my file is organized fairly well. We'll start with the topography here. I don't need the topography. I'm going to right-click. Actually, I don't have to right-click. I'm going to click on the little minus button to delete the layer. When that happens, it's going to ask, do you want to move the contents or delete the contents? In this case, I just want to delete the contents. I'll say, OK, those go away. Next thing here, as I come down, the walls are important. So I'm going to make sure I keep the walls. The kitchen here is just my kitchen cabinets. That's not important. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. and so we'll delete the contents there. The furniture, and you see that I'm toggling them on and off with the visible check mark, just so I can see what's on the layer really quickly. Sorry. There you go, you can see it a little bit better that way. That's the furniture. I don't need to worry about the furniture. I will once again click on the little minus sign and delete the contents. The roof here, those are those overhangs. We can go ahead and get rid of that. Delete the contents. There we go. Now the windows are kind of making up parts of the walls, so they may end up being important. So I'm going to skip them for right now. Layer 1, I don't even know what's on layer 1. Now let's get rid of it. I have a guides layer. All those guides can go away. I have my elevations. In this case, all of my elevations are on the same layer, which makes my life a little bit easier. So I'll go ahead and leave it there. If you're, well, I'll do it here with the doors and the windows in just a second. There's the doors. Now in this scenario, I have my walls, I have my windows. If I wanted the objects from the windows layer, all those windows, to show up on the walls layer as I'm starting to divide this down, I could take the windows layer, I could hit the minus sign here, and I can move the contents to the default layer, or I can move the contents to the current layer. Let me change and make the wall layer current, and then when I delete the windows layer, I'm going to move the contents to the current layer, and they're all going to show up on the walls layer. So it's just a way of consolidating down. I'll leave the elevations. The doors, I don't know how important the doors really are. I don't think they're that important. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those doors. And I have a bed layer. Let's get rid of that bed layer. Like that. I'm confused why the guides didn't get deleted. So I'm going to just manually delete them. Make sure that they go away. Okay, so I have layer 0 here. We can that's the default SketchUp layer, so it's still active. I have my walls, which include all of my walls, and I have my elevations, which include all of my elevations. There's a few little artifacts here. Looks like I missed part of this wall. This little piece of topo line is still there. So you may have to go in and make a few little corrections along the way. There we go. Like I said, I was missing a little bit there. Actually, I'm going to skip that for right now. And go ahead and delete that little drain. We don't need that. All right, looks pretty good. Now, as I move forward, I'm going to take each of these. I'll start with the floor plan here. And with this floor plan, I'm going to make it a component. You can make it a group, but I think the components work a little bit better as isolating the objects. So I'm going to right-click once I've selected it, and I'm going to say Make Component. And we'll leave it named as component number 1. That's fine. I'll go ahead and click on Create, and it creates its own little object. Again, this keeps it separate from everything else. I'm going to do that with each of the elevations too. So I'll right-click and say Make Component. I'll right-click and say Make Component. I'll right-click and say Make Component. One more selection, right-click, Make Component. Perfect. So now all of those are their own little components. There's no extra information anywhere that I don't need. I'm going to create a brand new layer, and I'm going to call this 3D Cabin. I'm going to make it the current layer, and I'm going to start to draw in my floor plan. And so in this scenario, I'm going to start with my floor plan. I'm going to use the line tool here, and I'm going to go ahead and start to draw around my object. So I'll start here. I'm going to work my way all the way around. Might have to zoom in. Almost there. And by the time I make it all the way around my object, I end up creating the whole floor itself. So one of the strategies, well, there's actually two strategies for doing this. One strategy is at this point to explode the basic floor plan. And when you do that, all those lines become live lines, and then suddenly you have individual cutouts. It may save you a little bit of time to do it that way, but you'll end up with more pieces than you really need. And so I think it's always a little bit easier or safer to go ahead and go through and make your own divisions. So I will start tracing around where my so I've drawn this piece, at least I thought I had, like that. There we go. And that then breaks this wall separate from this piece. So I'll continue on here. You can, if it's just a rectangular wall, you can use a rectangle and draw right over the top. So that one's easy. This post here is really easy. I could do it again for that wall, and then I could add that piece to it, go back and delete that line, and then that becomes its own. It's just different strategies for doing it. Or, of course, you could trace around the walls themselves. And essentially what I'm doing by doing this is I'm breaking apart all of these little pieces. There we go. And there's another piece. Come back over here to the kitchen. I was actually missing part of that wall. And that then separated out that piece. So I'm almost there. I'm going to skip the bedroom walls for just a second so that I can keep moving forward here. And so once I have these walls set up, it's a matter of using the push-pull tool and bringing up to elevation. Now, I already have the elevations drawn for how tall I think the building needs to be. So in that scenario, I can use these elevations to my advantage. So for right now, I want to rotate this component so that it's standing up vertically. And I'm going to do that by using a little cheater block, because if I went straight to the rotate tool, I'm only going to be able to rotate it in the flat plane. I want to be able to stand it up vertically. And SketchUp doesn't like to do that without some kind of a little three-dimensional object. So I'm going to draw in here a little box. I'll use push-pull, and I'll give myself a little height to the box. I will then select the whole elevation and the box, and I'll go to the rotate tool, and this will allow me to put the protractor on this side face to be able to control where it goes. So I'll go ahead right there, and I'll fold this up till it's on axis. There it is. And that then folds that up as a reference point, which is good. Now I need to pay attention to where my finished floor is and where it is on the elevation. So right now my finished floor is this surface. So if I were to draw a line over, I'm just going to leave it long here, like that, that line should end up at the finished floor, which is right here at the top of that stair, or right here at the bottom of those windows. So I need to actually adjust this down a little bit so that it ends up matching up here. So I'm going to go to my move tool, and I'm going to move this elevation down until it matches up with where that finished floor should be. You guys see how I did that? Let me do this whole process again for the next elevation. Let me do this elevation right here. Okay, so here I'll take the whole elevation. Once again, I need my little cheater object. So we'll make a square. We'll use the push-pull tool to give it some dimension. Oops. We will select, come on, there we go. Select the elevation and the box. I'll use the rotate tool, set my protractor there, this time in the green axis. Reference point is along the red axis here. straight up to the blue axis right there. And now it's standing vertically. I just need to make sure that my finished floor matches up. Let me go from this stair right here. I'll come across. Then I'll use the move tool to make sure that that stair, well, doesn't look like it's quite right. I have an extra stair. Go ahead and move it down. Yeah, it's going to come there. There it is. I had one extra stair drawn on the plan there, so we'll move it down right there. All right, so once again, that is set correctly at the right elevation. So I do that for each of those side elevations. When I'm done, I can select the box because I don't need that anymore. Likewise, I can select that box because I don't need that anymore. And now I can use these elevations as a reference for how tall these walls should be. So in my case, I have a flat roof, so it makes it a little bit easier. But I'm going to use my push-pull tool on, say, this wall here. There's push-pull. And as I pull it up, I'm going to move my mouse over and stop where the height of that wall should be. And it doesn't matter whether I pick this elevation here or I pick this elevation here. They're going to end up being the exact same height because I already set them. So if I came along the green axis here, that and that are going to match up to where my height should be. So let me do it again with this wall right there. Same thing, push-pull. We're going to start pulling up, and it should match up with that height right there. This little wall here should come up to right there. And you guys see how I'm starting to build this up. I will also need to create the roof above here. So to do that, I'm going to need to do some filling in. I could come across there. I could come all the way across to right there, and I could come back to there, and it's going to fill in that part of it. The roof has some thickness to it, so I could use the push-pull on the underside here to pull it down. I don't have a reference on that side, so maybe I will change my view. We'll push-pull so it matches up right there. Might need to go back in and retrace this top because I lost it. There we go. Then I can also draw a rectangle here. Oops. Like that. And then I can use push-pull again to make sure that that is the correct height. Like, come on, there. So you see I'm working my way through that. That actually I might need to get a little bit smaller because of the door. Likewise, I have a little entry alcove, and I need to do that one. So this probably gets another push-pull on that edge. Oops, I haven't isolated that piece just yet. And I'll use push-pull. And this is going to go up to that height there. That height there. So in that scenario, these were divided because I had that line that was dividing them. I can go in and I can delete this line here, and it will join those pieces back together. When you bring in and work from an AutoCAD file, for whatever reason, SketchUp really likes to have the faces reversed. So remember, if you don't want to see this bluish color, it doesn't matter for our outputs, but if you want to change it, you can right-click and say Reverse Faces, and you'll start seeing the white side instead of the black side. You could also select them all. You could right-click and say Reverse Faces, And except for those couple that I have done differently, there we go, right click, reverse faces, and now those are white as well. It's just a preference thing. So you would keep working your way through, start working on your drawings here. So in this scenario, I have some windows that I didn't end up drawing on the floor plan. If I wanted to transfer those over, I could start in this corner right here. I could come over along the green axis. I'm maintaining that green until I hit the face. There it is. And that gives me the first kind of guide point. I could start at the opposite corner down here. I could come across, again, I want to be on that green axis. There it is. Until I snap. There it is. I have those two reference points, so I can then use a rectangle to go from here to there to draw the outside of that window. Do you guys see how I did that with those projections? When I'm done, we can delete these so that we don't end up with too many of these lines. There and there. There was a slight offset to these. It's probably a 1-inch offset. So if I wanted to do that, I could go in and use the offset tool, which is right here. And I could say I want that offset to be 1 inch. I just type in 1 inch, and it builds that offset. I can then use push-pull to give a little bit more definition. I could pull out the trim, maybe by 1 inch. I could push in the window by maybe 1 inch. Like that. And so you can start to see that window there. Now the window isn't on the inside of my building just yet, because I haven't drawn it through. So in this scenario, I need to be able to draw it through. I could start right here, and I could draw this all the way to wherever it meets the inner face. There it is, on face. I'm just leaving that long there for a second. Let me come back to that point. And there it is on face. Sometimes you get trapped inside and you need to move a little bit. Leave that one like that. That. Then I could delete that, and we'd see the glass from the inside there. Now that material doesn't have glass applied to it just yet. So if you wanted to make it transparent, you can go into your materials here. You could go to your transparent materials, if I can find it. Glass and mirrors, there we go. You could click on glass, and then you can click on the surface itself, and it would start to become its own little window here. There might be some holes left. On the inside of the wall, in which case we could fill them in by just adding a little line like that, and we have that nicely filled in. Now that's for a custom window. The other option would be to use what are called components in your drawing or in your model, which is fair game for this assignment. We can do that by opening this Components tab here, and then we can look for specific things that we want to bring in. And so let me see here. We could search right here under Select. We can search the 3D Warehouse for specific items. So you could look, for example, for a window. And it will search and find various windows that have been drawn by people. And you could then bring one of those windows in. If you wanted to add furniture, you could go in and say, I want a chair. And there's a bunch of different chairs that you could bring in. Once you find the chair that you want, it's usually pretty easy. You click on it. Then you see an example of it here. And sorry, These are collections. We go into the chairs collection. You find the chair that you like, whatever it is. Let's use this one. And then you go ahead and click on the download button. You say, I accept. Load this directly into your SketchUp model. Yes. And wait. And there it is. There's the little chair. Looks like the chair wasn't quite in its correct orientation. We can use the rotate tool here, I hope. Again, sometimes it's helpful to have a little cheater object to help you do the rotation. There it is. And we want that to stand up. Like that. We can delete this particular piece. And then it's just a matter of placing that object there into your building somewhere. So I could say, okay, I want this to show up inside of my building. And you can drop it in. It's too high. We got to move it down. Move it down. It looks like it wasn't quite rotated correctly. This might not have been the best example. It doesn't look like it was built particularly well. But the point is that that's available to you if you want. Okay? So your job today is to bring in your AutoCAD file and to work through your components or work through your building. If you have a sloping roof, you can use your elevations to help guide your sloping roof. Draw your lines across, draw your intersection lines, and you can start to build it out from that. If you do in fact have a sloping roof, and I probably should do an example of a sloping roof. Let's say that I wanted a sloping roof on top of this section over here. When I did my lines, I would want, or when I did my wall extrusions, I would want those wall extrusions to be tall. So let me just quickly divide this so that you can see it. I would use push-pull. I'd make these extra tall. That. And then when you start to create your sloping roof, I'm at an unfair advantage here because I haven't actually done it. Sorry, bear with me for a second. Anyway, it doesn't like me. But the point is, I really need the elevation views to see it. But once you've created your sloping roof, oh, that's the problem. Didn't snap in the correct direction here. Come on there. There it is. So once you've created that sloping piece of roof on both sides, like that, any of these walls that are underneath that go through, you can then intersect the faces and delete them. So let me take this one. Right there. All right. It's always fun when things don't work the way you want them to. All right, there we go. So it goes past where that roof line would be. You can then take this plane here and this wall on both sides, there and there, And you can then right-click and say Intersect Faces with Selection. It'll make little lines right where those intersect, which will then let you delete the upper part of this wall without deleting the lower part of the wall. Or at least it's supposed to be that way. Oh, I didn't select this side. That was my mistake. So it should be this face, this face, this face. This face here. Then right-click and say Intersect Faces with Selection. Like that. And then once those are built and you have your intersections, then you can actually delete that upper piece and keep the lower piece of the wall. Okay? So anyway, that's how you would go about a sloping roof. It's really easy if you've already done it from your elevations. You may find in your SketchUp file that your sloping roofs, or what you thought your sloping roofs would be, don't really work anymore, and you might have to recreate them by yourself. Okay? So at least get the floor plan, get the walls up, and get your AutoCAD in, and then start building from here. We will work with this file extensively over the next several classes. My goal is for you guys to do a lot of assignment 106 in class, so you don't have to work on it too much outside of class. Remember, and it's actually written in the exercise today at the bottom, your final portfolio for this class is due on May 20th. That's a Monday. And I did that so that it's due before the rest of your finals. So hopefully it's out of the way and you don't have to think about it. It is due on Monday, May 20th, and it's worth 30% of your overall grade. So you don't want to wait and try to do this the night before or 2 nights before. It's something that you kind of need to be working on. We will spend another day in class talking specifically about portfolios and portfolio covers, so that you guys can get a sense for binding options and that sort of thing as well. So there is one more portfolio day coming up, but I would encourage you to work on this as you're starting to get ready. If you want me to have a look at your portfolio, I'd love to give you some feedback on it. Just schedule a time during office hours and we'll look, or if class isn't very busy, let me know. I'll come over and I'll sit with you and we'll go through it. Sometimes printing it out is actually a good strategy. You can learn a lot by seeing the physical version versus the online version. But in terms of me critiquing it, I don't mind looking at the InDesign file either. So that's coming. So just be aware. We're kind of wrapping things up. And I want you guys to be prepared and to do well on that. Are there any questions? Yeah. Do we have to print it as well? Yes, you do have to print it. So it's due on the 20th. It has to be printed and potentially bound. Depends on how you decide to bind it. Yeah. In your cabin? In this file? Absolutely. You can modify it. It does not have to be the same one that you turned in for 105. I would suspect that 90+% of you will make modifications, and that's to be expected. In design, whenever you're working on an architectural design, you're working on a graphic design, and industrial design for that matter, it's never done. No matter how much you think it's the best design ever, you're still making changes. And you still, if you had more time, you'd go back and fix this, or you'd go back and change that. That's the nature of being in design. So I would expect that you'd want to make changes to things that happened in 105. You'd want to say, no, I really like this better, and this works better. So make those modifications, take advantage of that. There's nothing wrong with it. Any other questions? Those were good questions. Yeah?
So, I'm from industry.
Yeah.
When AutoCAD started, we started with a layout.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that's the only one. And
Yeah.
then, because I'm free, we don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But this is getting a little deeper into that.
True.
So do you have any option or
Let me think about it. Let's talk about it. And I'm sure we can come up with something. All right? Any other questions? Yeah?
can you just show how to rotate the elevation here?
Sure. Happy to. So on this elevation view here, I'm going to create a little cheater object because SketchUp doesn't work as nice as something like Rhino with a 3D rotation. Because if I went with the object and went straight to rotate, I can't get the protractor to stand up on edge. So the easiest strategy there is to give yourself some kind of a little 3D object. And a box is the easiest one to create. And once you have that, then it's pretty easy to select both there. And when you go into rotate, the protractor will stand up on edge for you. And so then it's just a matter of starting with your drawing and then rotating it up. It looks like my box was floating in relation to where I did it. So I have some height corrections to make. But essentially that gets you up into that plane. And then it's just a matter of adjusting for your height. I already have this height across the way set, so I could pull that across on axis. And then I could move this one down. Until it meets. It doesn't really matter whether it stays on axis or not, because it's on that line. And then once it's down in position, then we know it's in the correct position and they all line up. So you just want to make sure that they line up after the fact. But that's the rotation. All right? Yeah, Brooke. No, it's in, when you do the save as in AutoCAD here, the files of type at the bottom here needs to change from a 2018 to a 2013. And that'll do it for you.